Welcome back guys for another video. So today we're going to start our finally we're going to start our front end. And the first thing that I want to do is actually organize our code a little bit better so that we can have a parallel service running in the front end in a way that doesn't hurt our architecture, right? So the first thing I would like to do, I'll create like a folder and I'll call this backend, and I will create another folder, and here you can call it client or front end as you wish. I will call front end. So basically all the files that we have so far, including all the projects, setup, everything that we have, we're going to apart from the front end folder, we're going to move that to the backend folder, and the front end folder will be empty, right? So now from now on, if you want to run your server, you need to go cd backend npm run dev, right? This is going to run normally like it was before in the folder 8000. And now that we know that the server works and that everything is fine, what we can do is leave the server. So I will step out of the folder. I will go to my front-ender folder now, and we will install a really nice tool from the React team that will help us to set up the React tool. If you don't know that yet, you can install using npm install-g, and what we want to install is the create React app. So now that we are installing or create React app, the next thing that we can do, we can actually, I will come back from this folder. Let's delete that folder, because when you create a new React app application, it asks you which folder do you want to use to create. So I'm going to delete that, and now I'm going to do create React app and front end. In this case, you can the front end will be the name of the directory and the application, so you can choose whatever is more convenient for you. This will do all the hustle for us. It will create all the things, pretty much everything that we need apart from the router that we're going to install, but initially we're going to start with that and build from that. So now that we have all the things installed, it takes a little bit a while. This following step is completely optional, but what I like to do inside the front end is to be changing the scripts. Instead of being start, I will change this to dev. And the reason being is quite obvious. It's just to keep consistent with the known bound that we have in the other server, so we know that both commands are the same. But this is entirely optional. If you don't want to do that, you don't need to do that. You can just use npm run start instead. So in this case, let's test the front end. Now I'm going to go to the front end folder. I'll do npm run start dev that I just changed it. It runs the command that is react script start. Let's see if we're going to be able to open the terminal. So this will open a new window on the port 3000, and this is basically the demo React application that's coming out of the box. There you have it. Now we got a complete application running, so we know that we can start doing some work inside that. What I like about React is that it's quite easy for us to make any code changes in that code. So the structure of the React is very simple. Inside of a source folder, it has an index. This index file is basically where they import a few things, including the service worker that we're not going to need because we won't support this functionality. So I'll be disabling and deleting that part. Also, the app has a few configuration, and one of the things that the app is doing here is using is importing the app from the app.js, and the app is basically that the main application that we had, right? So as you can see, if I change here, instead of learning React, learning the MERN stack, and save, it autos refresh here. If we come back to that website, you can see that now is learning the MERN stack. So we'll do some cleanups so that we can have everything in a good shape for us starting, right? So the first thing that I want to do is clean this up, right? So I'll be returning here basically just the string that we wrote, right? I also will be deleting the logo because we no longer will be using the logo. Inside the CSS, we can delete all the CSS and save. We can leave that there. Inside the index, we're going to basically remove this strict mode because we're not using strict mode. We don't need to use that right now. So we're going to remove that, and we're going to remove that. And basically now what we can do is put a comma here, and that should be all fine and working. Learning the MERN stack, right? So that's good. This will be my first commit. So mine, it has a lot of files because I just moved the folder, because I'm copying the folder and change the name and doing all these things, but you shouldn't be worried about this. So this will be the lesson. Do this commit now so that we have a good state to start developing this app, right? So now inside our main structure here, remember your terminal needs to be inside the front-end folder, right? So that you can run the commands there. Here, the first thing that I will do, I will create a new folder that I'll call components. I will do the following. We're going to create a folder that has pages. Inside the pages, we're going to have events page, register page, login page, dashboard page. Does that make sense? So that's what we're going to do. Inside pages, we're going to create our first initial folder that will be called login folder. So inside login, for now we don't have anything, but we're going to start creating a new app there, right? So the login page will have an index. So new file, index.js, and here we're going to start to build our React app. So the first thing that we want to do is import React. This is very important. Remember that the code that we type here is completely different from the code of the backend. So in the front end, because we use a different model system, we can use import and from. In the backend, because we're using basically just just Express, we can't do the same. So there is ways so that you can enable that, but I prefer to handle on my brain that the model systems is different for now. Earlier versions of Node support that, but it's not the case of this right now. So just keep that in mind. Import and from is for front-end application that run. The import and from is for front-end applications that run in the browser. And when we do const require, this is other file system that basically we use in the backend in Node.js. So basically, now we're going to import React, and we're going to start the structure defining a functional component, because this will be an example how you can use React hooks and the latest React features. So that's what we're going to do together. So we're going to start exporting, and we're going to create a default function that will be called login, right? This will be a function, a basically function. And what this function will do, it will for now return a piece of JSX. If you never did anything with React before, React has this friendly template that is named JSX, and JSX is a way for React represent the DOM elements. So when you see everything that is inside the return, that means will be rendered inside the page, it's quite easy for us to believe that we're doing like HTML, but actually this is not HTML, and there's a few differences that I'll be explaining as we go. So the first thing that I want to do here is a return, and we're going to open this parenthesis, and then inside the return, the first very thing that we're going to do is a div, like any div, and then here we're going to say hello from login. Like I did mention, this is quite similar to HTML. It remembers HTML, but this is JavaScript. This is a template language that we use that is called JSX, right? So let's carry on. Now that we have this main component, that will be the login component, just to show you how does React works. Basically, what are we going to do? We're going to come back here in the app. We're going to import this new component. This will be login from. We're going to find the pages, inside pages login, and because I have an index there, I don't need to specify index. Every time that you have an index like that, you can go until the folder and it will work without any issues. So now instead of returning the main stack, I want to return here the login. So this is a React component, and as a React component, as you can see, it behaves like pretty much like HTML, kind of like the structure that you would see in HTML, but this is a component. So this is what is really brilliant about React, is that you can modularize your code into components, and you can use a lot of different components, keeping the singularity responsibility and splitting your code base so that you have like a more elegant code base. So this was just one example. We're going to amend a few things here, but initially I would like to create a little bit the structure of our code and show you how it's going to work. So we're going to create another folder here. So we're going to create another folder here, just show you again. And basically inside the pages, I want to create a folder, and this will be the dashboard. And inside the dashboard, we're going to create another index.js, and basically I will copy this, but instead I'll paste here, and I will rename that to dashboard. And here we can copy and paste. So now if you come back here and you copy and paste that, if you select this word login and press Command D one time, you're gonna select in the same time both words. So now what we can do, we can basically delete what we have and type dashboard. So basically now I have two components. They're not doing anything yet. But just to show you how does React works. Here, if you're not passing anything to your component, any children's, any dependents to your component, you can close your component in just one tag like you would do with an image tag or other tags in HTML. If you need to pass another children, perhaps a login inside, just to show you an example. In this case, this is a not valid code, it's not going to work, but just to show you what I mean by that. apart from the login tag in the mid, this is a valid code, right? So you can see that dashboard has a login side because it has open tag and close tag, right? So exactly like you would do in HTML. So let's come back to that. Let's close this and let's start working. So now we have two components in the page. So I guess you did understand the situation. So let's start that. So the next thing that I want to do is prepare us to build our app, right? So while we're not doing much with the components, I want to install a few things that will help us to get where we need to get. So there is a library that is called Bootstrap. React Strap is the version of the Bootstrap. So if you Google that, you will find and you will see how to install this library. So basically what you need to do is do npm install bootstrap. So let's stop the server, and when that finished to install, we need to install React Strap. We don't need React and React DOM because we have that already. So let's wait that for finishing to install. I will cut the video to be quicker for you. So now that we finished to install that, let's install the save React Strap. And while this is installing, we can come back here, and one of the things that's quite important for us to do is to import Bootstrap in the index, right? So we will come back to our app. We're going to go to the index and we're going to go to the last line and we're going to import Bootstrap. Now, if you start your server again, remember that you need to be inside the front-end folder. Let's see how our website will be looking like. Can you see the words? Let's wait that. So it's refreshing already. Just change it a little bit. So the React Strap is an interesting website. I will leave up to you to explore a little bit more, but basically what that is, this is a bundle with a lot of components that you can use to style your application. So I have ready components here that you can use, so that makes your life a little bit easier. So as I will not spend a lot of time doing CSS, because my focus here is teach you the code of it, teach you JavaScript, teach you the Express, teach you the backend, the front end, teach you the client side. I don't want to waste time doing CSS because this is not my specialty. So I want to keep that concise and use the resource that we have for doing that. So okay, let's carry on. So the first thing first, that what we're gonna do, we will come back to our app.js component and we'll do a few things here. So inside this app, the first thing that we're gonna do, we will remove this. Let's start importing the components that we will need. So we need a container, and this container, it will come from the React Strap. And basically we're going to delete basically we're going to delete these divs that we have, and we're going to use the component instead, the container instead. So now I'm going to move that down and we have a container. What the container will do is basically a container stuff, right? So it did bring everything inside the container. So if you inspect here right now, you will see that we have this is the both components that we created. They are inside the container, and if you look here, there is some styles, some paddings being applied, and other things like media queries. So this is completely responsive for us, as you can see. And that's why we're using this library, because it will make our life much easier, right? So coming back to the container, the first thing that we want to do is add an h1 tag here, because we want a title, and we're going to say sports app for now. So I'm not focusing in user experience, I'm not focusing in the details. You can be free to change the pieces that you want to change, so that won't change the end result of this. Now there's another thing that I want to install that will help us quite a lot. So React has a library that kind of very helpful to help us navigating around the things, that is called the React Router DOM. So we need to install this. So I'm going to stop the server again, and we're going to do npm install React Router DOM. We have that installed. We can start to move pieces around, and I will show you how we're going to do that. So the first thing that we will do, we will create here in the source folder another file that will be called routes.js, like we did for the Express pretty much. We will start importing React from React, and now we will import few things from this library that we installed: a browser router, a switch, like a switch statement in JavaScript, and a route. This will be from React Router DOM. With that installed, what we can do is a little bit like that. We're going to create a default and export default function called routes. This function basically will return a few things inside. First, the browse route. Inside the browse route, we will return the switch component. Then inside the switch, we're going to use this to import, using the route component, all the libraries that we have. So how are we going to do that? Let me give you an example. Let's come back to the app. We won't need this here anymore, so we're going to delete that for now. And I will using Ctrl X to remove that from there. Basically we'll paste here, so we're still having the path for our components. So now inside of the switch statement, we want to do the following. We use the route, and we will say the path. This will be the path of the route. This needs to be exact. This is an optional parameter that you can use, and the components that will be used will be the login. Then we can close the tag, and we have our first route. The second route that we're going to have, it will be, in this case, it will be the register route. Sorry, the dashboard route. The register route we will have as well, but we're starting with this one. So we're going to have a path that will be /dashboard, right? The component will be the dashboard one. Okay, then we have both things working here. What we can do now is basically export this as we did already, and import in the app to consume this here. So below the React strap, we're going to import the routes. This will be from the routes file. and now we're going to return the routes component here. Okay, let's start our server back and let's see what happens now. This is how it was, our app, and now let's see how it is. Okay, so now I can see that I have a login in the main page, because this is the same that we do that, right? I think you guys know that. This is the root of our application. This is the default page that we have. So if you look at the route, if we do dashboard, let's see what happens. Hello from dashboard. So this is really quick and easy way to explain you how the React route works. And that's why we're using it, because for what we need just a really simple version of that. So this is more than ideal for our use case. So now that we have this route, the next thing that I want to do is start the configuration that will allow us to use another library to fetch the data from our API. So the first thing I want to do, I will stop this again. I will do npm install Axios. Axios is a very nice library that we use. While this is installing, we're gonna create another folder inside the source that we will call it services. I create a file by mistake. So it's a new folder, services. Inside the services, we're going to create a new file that will be called API.js. And inside the API, we basically will import Axios from Axios. This is a HTTP request handler, so it's the same that the fetch in the browser, but is a wrapper for the fetch and has some built-in functionality. The community of React use that quite a lot. I also like to use Axios, and that's why we're using here. So we're going to define here the API, and this the API will be the Axios. We're gonna initialize here then a create using the create method, because we want to pass a few basic configuration to it. And this will be a base URL. That means the URL from the backend. So if you remember the backend, it had a local host. So I'm going to use this example. But instead of 3000, if you look in the backend files in server, we are using the 8001, right? So there's a thing about this that we're gonna solve in the future, but basically now we're gonna use this one for development, and we will update it after in the future. So now we have this. Let me close. Basically what we need to do is, because we use a const to create that, we need to export default API. And that should be it. This will allow us to import something called API, that in the future we can do something like API.get. Does that sound familiar to you? API.post, API.delete, right? So this will be the thing, the middleware, that will handle all the communication between the backend and the front end. So we're going to use some so that you can understand a little bit more. So the next thing that we want to do now is basically create the minimal viable login page that we can have, so that we can test with our backend, and so that you can also understand a little bit how this thing's going to work together. That's the main goal that I have for this episode. So basically I will need to import the API from this new file that we have done inside services. So it'll be services API. Now that we have the API, we also will need extra few things to do what we need to do. We're going to start with, I guess, let me see, we will need a few things. I have the other monitor here, so I have opened the page on the React strap, so I have another page of that. So if you go here, just show you how you can do that yourself. If you go in forms, you will see a basic level forms that they have here, basically example of forms, right? So we have this one here with, it's kind of what we need. It is kind of what we need. Let's copy this for now. So what I'm trying to copy is these things, right? So that we don't need to type. So we need a form that has a button, form, form group, label, and input. So then we can change whatever we need from this form. So here from the form, we're going to copy this and we're going to paste and overwrite this. So if you do that and save, and we go for the login page, oh, I need to start my server back. I have an extra thing here, so we can remove, and basically we have a form. If you take this inline word out, we're going to have a form more in the way that we want in the future, right? So basically, right now, what we want to do is just test this, see if that works, right? So basically in React, it's quite easy how you can test this stuff. So we will need a few things here. First, let me take the labels. So this is from the placeholder. I kind of think we don't need labels, honestly. Like, labels can be nice, but sometimes I prefer to say something under these lines. Just have a label. Instead of a label, you can just have a placeholder where you can type something like your email, your password, your email password. Yeah, type email, type password. This is the important part. The name is password, ID is password, and this is email. Yeah, it sounds correct. So now that we have that in place, we can start to think how we're gonna do to handle this form, right? And there's a few things here that I think is very interesting. How does React work? Let me show you. The first thing that we want to do is to define some state. We want to store in memory this information for a little bit before we send to the server, because if something you log in, we do something else. If it fails, we do something else. So then we need to do, we use React use state. This is a hook that helps us use a state to help us to create a state. So in this case, it has a different format, and if you're used to the old React, you will find this is a little bit strange, but believe me, this is the best thing that React ever did for this project. The way you define a state is basically with an array, and then you will have an email and a set email, and this could be any name, could be email and pass value to email, whatever it is. By convention, I like to use set in front of the second word. And this is basically because set email will be a function that will add the value to the email state. So the way this works, you pass a use state, and then this is a method function call. So inside this, you can pass inside this, you can pass. So inside this, you can pass a default value, right? And this is quite amazing. So here, in this case, because this is a string email, we're going to have an empty string. And then basically we will have the same thing for the password. So I'll copy and paste so that we can do a little bit quicker. So it'll be password and set password using camel case. So now that we have this in place, we need to create another function. And this function, I will call it handle submit. So if you do const handle submit, this is an arrow function. So we need an async function because we will talk to the server API. And basically this is will take an event and we will return a function, right? So what we want to do here as first step is take the event and prevent it default, right? What prevent default does, it does prevent when you click here that you refresh the page, right? So that's what this handle submit does. If you see here, look the URL. If you click here, you can see that every time that I click this page refresh, that means I will lose the values of the things that I have. So when you use prevent default, this is won't happening. And the way that we do that is passing to the form on submit. And here we're going to pass the handle submit function. Now, if you come back here, now I'm clicking, not sure if you can hear that. We're not refreshing the page anymore. And another thing that is interesting is to show you how we're gonna go about to take the values of the email and password. And this is quite nice. So inside the handle function, we're gonna define the values. So inside the form, we're gonna define a few things to help us to change the value of those functions, right? So that's how we're gonna go about this. So inside you have a form group, and then you have an input tag. Inside this input tag, we can basically pass another property here that will be onChange. This is a function. This is basically a function that will take an event and it will pass the event to the set email. And inside the event, I don't want to pass the entire event, so I want to pass the event dot target dot value, right? This will be just the email. And I will do the same thing for the other function, but instead of on change set email, I will be on set password, right? So this is the both functions. So every time that I press submit, I'm changing the value of set of password and of email. So to show you that how that does that work, you can do console log here. I will say result of the submit, and we're going to pass here email and password, right? So look how amazing React is. So now if you type here, I'll say test@test.com, and the password will be test. If you look the console and submit, there we go, test and test, test. So it's all working until now. So the first thing that we need to do now is what do we do with that response? And basically now we're going to use our friend API here to send that to the server and check that against the server, right? So that's what we want to do. So basically in this line here, I'll keep it the console log for now. We will do a few things. We will create a const response. This is equals await, and we're going to use the api.post. And if you look inside api.post, just to explain that how does that work, let's go to the API. This is the base URL. So I just need to add the extra dashes and the rest of the path. So the way that this is works is the following. If you look your routes again from the backend, the logging is basically dash logging. So that's what we're going to do. But before we're doing that, let's create another tab here in the terminal. So now we can navigate between different terminals. This is the terminal 1 with the front end, and this is the terminal 2 with the front end. So what we want to do right now is basically go to the back end and do npm run dev. Now we have a developer server running in the ports 8000, and in the number 1 we have this thing, the React happening here. Excuse me. So because I have a larger screen, I will give the luxury myself to do that besides one to another, right? So I will close this one. I'll come back here. I will navigate to the back end, and I will do npm run dev here. So I can see the both terminals in the same time. If you have a nice monitor, I suggest you doing the same. This is really good. So now that we there, let's come back to the logging page. So then here we know that we want to post to logging, right? And then what we do as a second argument, and this is the nice part, we need to send an object that will have the email and the password. So this means as soon as you press the handle submit, when you click submit, we'll call this function. This function will receive, will do prevent default, and will use email and password, and will fire to the server, right? And then that's the nice thing. Remember that if we manage to log in successfully, we need to get the user ID back. That's the thing, right? So then what we want to do here is const user ID. This is going to be a response.data, because every time that the Axios return a response, it brings the data back inside the data object. And remember how it was called the ID from MongoDB? ID, right? If we don't have that, what we want to do is return a false here, because we're going to check against this value soon. So if we do here if user ID, what we can do is basically use a local storage. So if you never heard about local storage before, don't worry, I'm going to explain to you what local storage is. Local storage is basically a storage that you have, everyone has inside its own browser. So you have a little bit of memory that you can save some objects inside so that you can check for that value later on if you need. So basically we're going to try to save the user ID inside the browser's local storage, so that every time that you're navigating between the routes, we can send this to the server and check if you have the rights to be in that place, or if you have who are you, right? If you send the request for create an event, who are you, who are creating this event? So we're going to use the local storage to do that. Coming back to that, let's add this to the local storage. It sounds complicated, but I swear it's super simple. So local storage, this is an API from the browser. If you're asking, we have a few methods: remove item, set item, key, get item, clear, etc. So we're going to set, because it's a new item and it's the first time. You need to pass as a first argument an item name. In this case will be user, because we're going to register on the user, and then you pass the user ID. If that happens, we can do history. This is basically, we need to change your route, right? So that's the thing that we want to do. So another thing that we need to do right now is from the logging, we want to receive a param, and this param will be a history. And this is basically a thing that the router passed to us. So you don't need to understand this at first. You just need to know that what is it? This is a history of your navigation that the route send to us every time that you go for a different URL, so that we can keep a track where you was, where you going to, right? And that's how this is work. So basically I'm saying, talk to the server. If the response has an ID, then I want to save that inside the browser, and then I do history dot push, and this will force you to go to another URL, in this case dashboard. All right, so that's what it is. If you don't have that, I don't want it to log in, I will do an else, and I will do something else instead. Do you remember the message that we send if you don't log in? Okay, so we're gonna do const message, because this will come from the response. This will be equal to data.message, sorry, response dot data, because if you and for now I will basically console this back. So right straight off back, if you type anything here, we know that this is not going to work. This is the HTML5 validation, so it needs to be a format of email. Let's do it. User not found. Do you want to register instead? Do you remember that message? If you go in network, if you look the login, this is what I submitted, and you can preview the response. This is basically what we're doing there. So if you look our backend was designed to do that, exactly that. So what we can do to test this is to check out Insomnia, go and get a user ID. So now we know that we have this user here that I think I remember the password. I think is test, not sure. If that doesn't work, we're going to create a new one. So we're going to go, this is the email of the user, and what we want to do now is type test. That I think was the password, or password, maybe password. Okay, hello from the dashboard. See, if you show here, this is what I typed, and that's how you do a login using an Express and React. So now that we have a functional login page, I think the next thing for us is to create another page that will be the register. And then we have, let's do like a register, let's do the dashboard, the upload image, and then we start to do to finish the app and do like the image styling and other things. Let's get it working functionally first, right? That's how I intend to be doing here. So let's create then another folder, right? So we're going to create now the register folder inside pages. It will be register. That we will have also, we can copy this file because it will be kind of similar. So we can paste inside register, and then we can come by here. The first thing we need to do is change the function name to register, and then we're going to have email, password, but we will have more things. If you go in modules in the backend and look to the registration, we need to the user, we need first name and last name as well. So let's close this back. Let's come back to register, so we can say const first name, set first name. This will be equals to that, and we can do const last name, set last name. This will be also equals to that. Don't need two signs of equals, just one is enough. And then here we want to log out for now the first name and last name as well, and as you probably are guessing, we need to destructure these things here as well. And basically we will need more fields, right? So the way I like to think about this is like name, email, or maybe email, name, and password. Well, it's up to you. I will copy this one by. I will add twice. The first one will be where is email. I will use Command D. I will change to first name. The first name is defined there. So the property name is the property name that will be passed when you receive here as a param. This will be set first name, and then as the same here, I'll do Command D, Command D, Command D, and here will be last name, and here will be set last name. Of course, here we can say first name, and here we can say last name. The only type here is text. This is the type is text. So let's have a look here. So if I want form types, text, yeah, so that was correct. So now that I have this new register, what I want to do is go to the routes. Remember the routes? Now we can create another route that basically will be called route path. Will be dash register exact component and let's import here. Import register from page from register. So now we can pass this here. This exact property is like if you send a URL that has a missing R, it's not going to find this component because it needs to be exactly the same. So that's what means the exact. And we want to do that because sometimes you could have another router that, just to give you an example, that could be here registration. So if you have a router called registration and you don't have this exact here, basically you'll never be able to go to this router because register here is not exact. So this one is shorter and it was first, it would go for this one instead. So that's basically what that does. So we can remove that. We want to be an exact. Oh, I need to close here. That what is that about? So now that we have the register components there, let's see if we can access the register components. So if you go back there, register, there you have it. You have the register. Something that I want to do just to clarify and be a little bit, improve a little bit this right now because it's quite easy to do, is let's add a few things here in the logging and then we do there as well. So basically what I want to do is wrap everything in a container. So we're going to wrap everything into a container, and then also let's have an H2 here that will be logging. Logging like that. Yeah, that should be enough for now. We can add more things, I guess. You could say something like, you could have a paragraph here and say something, please, let's use strong here and say logging into your account. Will help us. Container is not defined, so of course we will need to import container. Label is not being used, so we can delete. Now we should copy this and the container and come to the registration page so that we can do basically the same work here. Here will be register, please register for a new account. We're going to style everything later on, so you shouldn't be worried about styling right now, just to let you know, right? We will do it. So container is not defined, same thing. Let's take this label and paste a container. So at least now a little bit better. We know we have a title, we have a register, we will center this, we will have a background and everything else. But the main thing that I want to test if this is actually working or not, right? So let's see. I will do, my name will be a test22 because why not? My last name will be, oh, this is the first name. Test last name will be test first name. Let's change that then. Test. Damn. First name. Test. Last name. Test. Email at test.com, and the password will be password because this is the most secure password ever. So when we register, this is the problem with copy and paste, right? So we won't change that to register. So let's look our backend, right? So the backend says that if you want to create a new, will be register. So user-register is what we need. Yeah. So user-register. So let's go back to the register page. So this will be user-register. We're going to pass all this data, and if you register, basically because you did register and we're not doing email validation or anything, I want to send you to the dashboard, right? Perhaps if you fail, we could send you to the login page if you have the email already registered or something like that. But for now, this sounds good. So test email, password will be password because test is shorter, because why not? No, I don't want to save. You can see hello from dashboard, and if you look the response, there you have it. We have all the things, including the password, that we can even remove that from the backend. Let's do that before we forget. So looking at the backend, if you go into the user controller, inside the user controller, in order to return the user, what we can do is basically return everything that we need instead of the password. So in this case, what we're going to do, we want to return the ID as user.id. We want to return the email as a user.email. We will want to return the first and last name, so it will be basically the same thing that we had there. This will be user.firstname. This will be last name, user.last name. This will return a basically response because the ID we need to save into the database. And this way we can protect the password without sending the hash password. I know this is a hashed password, but I don't think we should be sending password down to the client this is like users security issues. I don't think this is nice to do. So if we have here, let's reload this page. Here we're gonna create my name, my last name, my test at doesn't exist, by the way, and then the word test. Now if I send that, it works, it logged in, and there you have it. I have the ID that I needed, I have everything that I need so that I can store that inside the session, right? So basically the client now, if you go, let me have a look if I can show you. If you go here and you go inside the session local storage, and you go here, you can see that you have a user, and this is the ID of the user that I just got. So if we put there, just show find C9 in the end. So that's exactly what we needed. So there you have it. Now we have an application that has login page, has a registration page, and for the next episode we're gonna do the dashboard, and we're gonna handle the file upload for this dashboard, and we're going to start to style the components. And basically my idea is we're going to be able to create the events in the website, we're going to be able to see the events, and also after that we can create the React native app so that you can check the same thing in the app. So that's going to be fun. Thanks guys very much. I really appreciate, and I hope that you are enjoying this series so far. So if you are, please don't forget to leave your support, your like, and your comments, because every single video of that takes me like about 4 hours to do, and I hope that with your support we can spread this video for more people that want to learn this amazing stack and improving their careers. So thank you so much, you guys. I hope that I see you in the next video.